Esta
Bob,
conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Sorry, you can go.
Okay. No. Okay. I was asked to give some information or some presentation about disruptions along value chains in offshore wind or wind industry in general. So this is the photo here on the first slide we see from our last year conference, Windforce in Bremen, with roughly 150 people, which is a special conference on major focus on offshore wind industry. Something a little bit about VAP, which is an association, a legal private organized association, which is representing at the moment roughly 250 industry companies and research institutes along wind industry value chain, and with a certain share to maritime industry. We are a business network, especially originally coming from offshore wind mainly, and representing onshore wind industry in northwestern Germany. And we are also looking into application of green hydrogen generated from offshore and onshore wind mainly. So with this 250 companies we are representing, they are along all these steps in the value chain. So from early project development until decommissioning of wind farms and recycling. So far we don't see too many decommissioning steps at the moment because the offshore wind farms are too young in operation for decommissioning in Germany. But as mentioned in the text above, we are representing offshore wind, onshore wind industrial companies in the background of these processes here, the generation of green hydrogen and the power distribution. And these companies are mainly from German market, and we try to link them internationally to grow also outside German onshore offshore wind and green hydrogen market. VAP is an excellence cluster with a silver label at the moment. We are aiming towards gold label in the future. Just to give you an idea, it's a really colorful bunch of flowers here, from turbine manufacturers, component manufacturers, logistics companies, engineering companies along these value chains. The biggest ones are the dark green one, IT and service operators, and some logistic companies and certification bodies. So this is just to give you an overview what kind of companies just by name are behind this 250. We have some bigger ones like Siemens Gamesa, for example, which is maybe the most familiar one, and some other like engineering companies here, and there are some service providers like Deutsche Windtechnik here, and some research institutes like Fraunhofer IBIS. Furthermore, this is our setup. We are 5 persons in the head office of our association. Me in person and a colleague here, we are mainly running the cluster management and the memberships and the research and development. These 2 colleagues are mainly running communication and marketing, and then our general manager, Ms. Winkler. We have a board, which is just for information, of which are coming from the different members along the value chain, which are also represented in our members. Main tasks are internationalization, fostering cooperation between the different companies we have here, training and studying innovation and corporate communication towards politics mainly, and on the other hand, internally to provide a positive image of offshore wind industry. We have a certain amount of, we are organized, let's say, in working groups towards certain topics, along offshore and onshore, and with some new topics here. Why I highlight this green one here is because we discussed, especially in the last weeks, now I come to the disruptions along the supply chain. Again, this picture here, as we represent companies along this supply chain here on the bottom of the page, from project development to decommissioning, which is not very active at the moment because the wind farms are too young in Germany. We see, as we are informed from our members, a certain amount of different impacts from this corona situation, which is on the one hand regarding the certain scheme of project development at the moment. So we have a governmental body implemented in Germany, which is preparing auctions which will be sold to or auctioned to the different bidders, which are mainly utility companies, which is at the moment due to the corona situation a bit slowed down. As additional effect to the so far, which has just recently changed cap within building a certain amount of gigawatt, which is necessary to maintain our industrial supply chain. We see some certain impact in the financing and insurance area. I will give an example later on. Due to especially disconnected supply chains, especially for main manufacturers which are receiving components from rest of the world, which are a bit disconnected or at least delayed. This in let's say in connection to this, of course, the manufacturing is delayed, and to all of this, this is why we have these icons here, is that of course there are implemented contracts along the supply chain between the buyer of a wind farm or a construction company of the wind farm and the manufacturers, and these are, let's say, to a certain degree disrupted in terms of the timeline, so mainly delayed or on hold. Another one is this is kind of forwarded, let's say, this issue. Of course, if components are late, then construction and transportation will be delayed. From grid connection, we don't have this impression at the moment that there's a big delay, because the current activities in installing new capacities on offshore, onshore wind is due to the political cap at the moment quite low. But what we can see, again, because we have some operation companies and service and maintenance companies in our members, that due to this corona situation, especially, for example, the summer campaigns in offshore wind, which means that you are able to access the offshore wind farms by crew transfer vessels or anyhow have sufficient weather conditions to do repair jobs are now at the moment, due to this COVID situation, limited, so that either work packages which have been scheduled cannot be performed in this according to timeline, according to schedule, or they have to be shifted to next year. And that is also, of course, because of contact limitations you have in person, which means to send out maintenance staff to outside, and they are actually at the moment in some areas not able to work as they should be. In engineering, of course, due to home office and so on, there's some impact, but not a very big one at the moment. That is what we see and what we get as feedback from our members along the supply chain. We made a survey with our members, and that was also, if you see this 250 in the beginning, that is, let's say, the spread we have. And this has been done with a SurveyMonkey survey. Excuse me. And this is, let's say, the first summary. It's still running, and that is the first feedback I tried to summarize here. So, for example, for the manufacturers, one of the biggest concerns, of course, is because of the limit, and they are working internationally, because of limitations for traveling. They see, let's say, disruption, or they see difficulties in acquiring new contracts, because you need personal contact for this, and if you are limited to traveling, then this is not so easy. You can prepare it, but signing and so on, that is not so easy. And it's we are talking about often very big contracts, a big amount of money. And of course, the international project execution. So we have one, for example, we have one project development company in our members, which is also working on offshore wind farms in Taiwan on big projects. And this company has, due to the traveling limitations, quite some challenges at the moment to keep up these projects running. Another item in our along our supply chains, or in our members representing the supply chains, is the German word is Kurzarbeit. The best translation is short-time work. This is a certain political tool we have in Germany, which allows to, although you don't have work at the moment for your staff, to keep the staff, send them at home for all days or just a certain amount of days per week, and the days which are where they are not able to work in the company, the money will be compensated by the German state, depending if you are, what kind of family background you have, between 60 and 67% of the weight. So this is quite a good tool, and our members, we got the feedback that our members are using this actively to prevent mass layoffs in their staff. We also asked them what kind of questions or support would you ask towards the politics to mitigate the situation. As they launched a big support package from the state, which also helps especially small companies to compensate some running costs with a certain amount of money they can request from state, and they don't have to pay it back. So that's, for example, for office rental or office machinery you need, like printers, laptops and so on. So all the running costs, not staff costs, but running costs for your office that can be compensated for, let's say, 3 months or something like this if you are a small company. One of the positive feedback we see from the SurveyMonkey we have at the moment is that the member companies we have are at the moment not planning to have layoffs. Which is a good message, of course. And another one is that which is a bit concerning for us is that if the companies are not only related to offshore wind, they have, let's say, different divisions or different markets which they are supplying. They try to consider to readjust their company to the other markets. And some questions just to give you an idea. This is a question about how many. This is related to the first one here. How many? What's the impact? Let's say due to traveling limitation, etc. Did you experience loss or delay of orders or reduction of orders? 50% of the feedback was there's no impact, and the rest there's quite a big variety here. Majority says they experience loss or reduction of new orders between 35 and 50%. Another question was, how are your current projects or orders? Most of them say they are delayed or on hold. Some say, a minority say they are running as usual, but the majority say they are delayed. What is a bit concerning is that, and that is, I will come back to this in a minute, that most of the members say they were not able to agree mitigation actions or procedures to kind of compensate loss of income or payment milestones or so with the customers. And another one, just to give you an idea how we are, what we are representing is that the majority of the companies we are representing are classic SME companies in Germany, which are between 11 or 50 persons, and only 18% are above 150. Some activities we recently did for our members because the COVID situation, they addressed some questions for us. Is one webinar we supported our members is about crisis communication. So Ms. Schwarz here in the picture, she's a specialist in communication management and specialized on crisis management and crisis communication. So that was a very good one. And then two other webinars we offered towards our members is a legal one. So we have also lawyers as which are specialized on contract law in our members, WAP members. So we, especially regarding design and impact on running contracts, mainly what is at the moment used very often is the so-called force majeure clauses in a contract. So how to handle this and how can this be let's say used or implemented, or what is the impact of this COVID situation on the contract? That was one webinar we offered, and in connection to this, we had an insurance webinar. So we have one big insurance company, which is or insurance broker, better to say, in our WAP members. So when it comes to the situation that the contract is disrupted minimum on the timeline, so delayed or on hold. We got the information from the manager of this insurance broker company that a lot of companies try to use, if available, clauses from their insurances to compensate delays or on hold situations. That was a discussion we had here with our members. So that was a very useful webinar for all of our members here, and they got good advice how to run this situation and mitigate the situation, and to discuss this with their customers. And the next question which comes out of this webinar now for us is we also have members in operating the offshore and container terminal in Bremerhaven, and from a research institute for international shipping, which is doing market research. So, and they also already gave some interviews to German television. What is the situation on the international transportation chains? When will they be, hopefully, if we don't see a second phase of COVID wave, when can we expect that they will be up and running again? And so when what point of time can be expected that contracts can be implemented or picked up again as usual, and that certain insurance are not overstressed at the moment? So this is what we discussed with our members during the last weeks. This should not be a commercial for us, but we have a big conference every year that was also on the front page. This is, of course, we delayed this already from mid of May due to the COVID situation, to hopefully we can do this now at the beginning of September. This is a threat directly for us, you can say, if we face a second wave of COVID, and we have to delay it again, or we have to cancel it in the worst case, then of course that will be quite a big impact on reputation and commercial for us as association for our industry members in our office, and how to run our services for our members. So, and then I'm basically through. I hope that was gave you an idea of what this can be expected, what kind of situation we see in our business area along the value chain, and what we did at the moment for our members. And yeah, thanks for the time. Thanks for listening. And be free.
Excellent, Hartmut. Thank you very much. I think it was comprehensive and clear. Thank you. I have a very quick question. How high is your percentage of exportation exports in the clusters? Just to understand the impact. How high is the export net billing, for example?
You mean from our company members?
Yes, yes. To understand the impact.
Yeah. If put it this way, the majority of the companies, maybe not the operation and maintenance companies, are set up internationally, and they have a high rate of export. I can't say a certain amount of billion of euros, but if you consider to supply for an offshore wind farm, then everything is an export. Although it's maybe this so-called exceptional economic use area, which is related, dedicated to Germany, everything is export. Everything will go outside Germany. Then.
Okay.
Not onshore wind, but offshore wind, everything. Yeah.
That was my impression. Thank you very much. So now it's the turn for everybody in the list of attendants. We can share questions or experiences from other clusters with this kind of activities or comments. The floor is yours. Who wants to be the first? Somebody has questions for Harmut? Harmut, could you share again your presentation in the slide where we can see the main disruptions? Will it be possible? Thank you. No, at this moment we are not seeing the screen. Anyway, questions, comments?
Hope it's coming through.
Yes. Now we are seeing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, but I'm Delphine Garnier, Materialia cluster. I would like to know what about the recycling the wind turbine. Do you have acts or do you have operation about this type of for the recycling, for the especially composite?
Yeah. We have one member which is especially related to scrapping and separating the fiber or let's say composite material from blades, rotor blades. And they are currently let's say the mechanical scrapping is not the biggest issue. The technical main challenge is the resolution of the glue and the composite fibers and the other materials which are integrated into the rotor blade in a chemical way, so that you get most pure remains and materials which can be either returned to another industry or returned into a certain process, or let's say scrapped in a most appropriate way. So that's mechanical scrapping is the easiest one, but chemical resolution of the two-component glue, the resin, and either glass fibers or carbon fibers, and maybe if you have a balsa wood or something like this in the or steel components is also quite easy, but to get out the separate the different components on the chemical way, that is the challenge they are working on at the moment. They have some solutions and some patents on the scope, but they try to ramp this up on the industrial level. put it this way. So some of the material will be going into construction works, especially road foundations, and they are working on some components which can be returned into other plastic-related processes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, more questions. I have a one question for Harmut. Are there, I don't know how do you call them, okay, but installation in the sea that have stopped by these disruptions? Have they suffer the disruption until the level of stopping the working?
That depends. Not really. So that depends mainly on the supply of components then. So if they receive components to install, it's not mainly the process of installation. It's the question: do they have the components for installation?
So, but generally speaking, they are working.
Yes, but at the moment, that is maybe, to put it this way, that is on the one hand, of course, that's not what the situation we want to have is that we have, due to the political cap, which has now been lifted only recently in Germany, we have a very low installation rate at the moment of new turbines offshore and onshore. So the impact on installation or construction is not too big at the moment. And the vessels are more or less for offshore, for example, are searching for work in Europe. So that is not the biggest impact. The impact at the moment is, do they have components, and it's more on the service and operation area for the running wind farms. So they have limitations, and the rules in Germany are changing basically from week to week about contact limitations and so on, and that is not so easy for them to operate this business at the moment.
And do you depend a lot of components coming from other countries outside Europe, or it's a low level dependency?
Let's say the main components are coming from Europe. The biggest packages, if you are talking about, let's say, an offshore wind, for example, foundations, the big steel structures, the wind turbines, and so on, the offshore substations, they are built around Europe somewhere. But let's say in the deeper, if you go some steps further down the supply chain, then of course there are also components which are sourced from US or from Asian areas. So that is there is some impact, yes. Yeah. But this is maybe not on the OEM level. That is more on the second, third tier level.
Okay,
and luckily, this branch is not so much that, let's say, interconnected to especially maybe Asian area like automobile also. That's not that big. Yeah.
Not the same. Perfect. Questions, comments?
Antonio, can I make a question to Ernst? A very quick question. Ernst, we are going now to have in the European Union the Green Deal that is very focused also in the renewable energies and the environment. What do you think that are the challenges for your ecosystem within this Green Deal that we are going to have?
Yeah, I think that, of course, it will be beneficial for our members and along our value chains, the German suppliers. We lost quite a significant due to the political cap. For some years, we lost a significant amount of players in this industry. For example, in Germany, we lost almost a handful of big steel structure companies, which are in insolvency. We don't have any at the moment. We don't have any manufacturers for substations anymore. We have a good share in cable industry, which is also, and I was also working in cable industry some years ago. So and there was some big mergers in the past, or the younger past, let's say. So, for example, between Prysmian and General Cable, that was a big merger. And of course, let's say the engineering part for the turbines is for example, for Siemens Gamesa, quite a lot of this is situated in Hamburg. So by saying this, there will be, and the majority of our companies are hoping for this Green Deal and looking forward to serve this. But they are, majority is not OEM manufacturer. So that depends a little bit on, of course, we have a Siemens Gamesa and we have an MHI Vestas and so on, but as members, but this is more or less, then that's almost it for OEM manufacturers. And they provide turnkey contracts, and the rest is, we have more or less the classical SME companies in Germany. And yes, they are looking forward for the Green Deal. Yeah, sure. Or they have the, let's say, for them, or they have to readjust their business outside wind.
Can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
Helmut?
Yes.
Thank you.
This one?
I have another question. Why? What are the main reasons for for those members that are looking for other scopes in their companies outside of the wind industry? Why outside? Because you are not suffering so much, as I understand. Or what kind of new scope are they looking for?
We made last year. We made a bigger research with a market research institute about the setup of supply chains in especially offshore wind industry along in Germany. And of course, there's a strong focus. A strong part of these companies are situated in northern Germany, but another one is in the west and southwest Germany. And these companies, which are mainly not OEM companies, but they are supplying, for example, for the substations or for into bigger electrical components or into the wind turbines, like yaw drives, hydraulic drives, gearboxes, and so on. This is only one branch for them. Yeah, wind industry is, if they are talking about, if you are talking about, for example, big roller bearings or so on, then these companies are, for instance, since the market was capped in the last years, wind industry was maybe 5% for them. If it can be a significant market for them, but and it can come up again, and also for the Green Deal. But this is nothing where they can, let's say, live on or make living for the company on. So then maybe not readjusting it's maybe not the correct word. Then they are maybe focusing on the other divisions they have. So they are in heavy machinery, trains, construction machinery, shipbuilding, other power plant, or for example, like for chemical industry, process industry. Yeah. So then they return to other or focus on their other divisions they have. It's nothing where they can run their companies on. That the market is then too small for them.
That's very interesting because we are looking for those kind of linkages between industrial ecosystems. Okay, and what you are telling us is that your members have a high capability to link with other activities, not only in the renewable energy area.
Yeah, so especially let's say bearings. Then we have some cable manufacturers, which is also, of course, it's a significant, a good if the division or this market is working for them, then it's a good market for them. But it's too small to make living for the companies. And if they are relied, or if they have relied too much on this market, or if they have totally specialized, like we had the suppliers for big steel foundations, for example, or substations, they are gone. They are out of the market. They had for the first wind farms quite big learning curves, and then they came more or less, let's say, this political cap in Germany, and projects have been delayed or stretched on the timeline, and then this is they lost their market basically. They were not able to maintain it. Especially Bremerhaven. We had two turbine manufacturers. We had a big steel structure manufacturer in Bremerhaven, which was providing jacket foundations and some piles and of course the substations, all gone. So this is Bremerhaven was looking into this industry as a big, bright future, and also implemented some lessons learned from the former shipbuilding industry, which was large in Bremerhaven, and they had quite a good know-how in this area, which could be transferred to this offshore wind area to a certain extent. Now it's basically more or less totally down again, this market, you can say. In Bremerhaven, it's almost gone. We have some big research institutes in wind industry, but the market for components in the city, in this area, is almost gone.
So this is about resilience also and flexibility on the industry.
Yes.
Okay. Not so related to the COVID, but to the general model, business model before even, no? I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. More comments, more questions. Other experiences, other situation that you would like to share here with us. Would you like to go deeper? And there is one question from Dolores, okay, in the chat, telling, good morning, everyone. What is the state of the art of the floating turbines versus the standard bottom fixed turbines. Would you comment on that, Harmut?
Yes, yes. Some weeks ago we had an interesting. Also, normally we do this meetings or working groups in presence, so face-to-face meetings and really working groups. Now we have, at the moment, we have to put this into a webinar situation similar like this one here. But there are different solutions, let's say, at the moment, which are tested out in France. Ideol is one company which is quite familiar in Europe for this setup, and there are some plans coming up in France for floating structures. And let's say the main market at the moment, I would say it looks like Japan will be a big market for floating foundations, and the wind turbines are at the moment, so for the implemented solutions, also mainly in Japan, are significantly smaller than the one we see at the moment, which are installed in on offshore wind farms. So they are maybe around something between 4 and 5 megawatt power put out, and the ones which are actually on bottom fixed, mainly let's say monopiles. If the ground is feasible and not too deep, then they are around 8 or up, more or higher, minimum 8 megawatt at the moment. But there are solutions. Some of them are implemented already. I know Ideol, which is a member also of WAP, they are looking into foundations which are feasible to carry wind turbines up to 12 megawatt at the moment, at least in the engineering. Depends, of course, on the turbine type and the loads and so on. But this is investigated at the moment, and of course there are some other important links which are how to fix this on the seafloor. So they have different steel ropes, chains, or fiber ropes which they are investigating, and the other discussion is a little bit around the cables you need for connecting the turbines. It's not the standard cable you use at the moment in the bottom fix wind turbines, but this is solvable. There are solutions on the way, and I think that is a matter of time, and then a scaling effect, a matter of cost in the end, how costly these floating foundations are. Then they are looking, main idea is that they are looking into a different logistics concept, that they basically try to completely erect the turbine onshore in a harbor, and then swim out the complete turbine. So to save some money on the installation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. More questions? José Ramón.
Hello, Antonio. Good morning. Good morning,
Hello.
everyone. I'm José Ramón from Meta Industry Cluster in Spain, and I wonder of the decision making for new investments, new projects, or on how do your members see the entry of new contracts, new investments in new or extend wind farms, offshore wind farms after the worst part of the crisis, of the coronavirus crisis.
Yeah. That is very much related to the, let's say, to the market design in Germany. in the world it's different. In Germany, it's comparable to Dutch, for example. They have an auctioning mechanism at the moment. The first rounds have been performed some years ago already, and prices are extremely low. So the remaining companies which are constructing or which are buying these wind farms are mainly utility companies, the known utility companies in Germany, or let's say also Ørsted and so on, which Vattenfall, for example, and in Germany, E.ON, Energy, and so on. But they are, let's say, they are the owner and operator in the end, and the constructing company. And they release, I would say at the moment, something around 5 contracts related to cable, for example, which is a turnkey contract. Then they will have one for the substation, also turnkey, which is including installation and everything. And another bigger one will be for the turbines, including foundations. That's the last contracts. And then you have, of course, something around the preparation, seafloor investigations, and so on. So let's say the amount. I worked some years ago also on such a company, not as a utility company, but as a project company, and we had a private created investment for this, supported by a big finance company from the States. And we went a different way forward. So we decided to take, let's say, the risk into the project company and to coordinate a lot of different contracts and interfaces. Because if you reduce the amount of contracts and you buy turnkey, then of course the risk will be shifted into the main contracts, and the main contractors, they will of course increase the cost. And then the setup is completely different for these projects. And what we are representing, of course, we have, as I mentioned, we have Siemens Gamesa, for example, or Vestas MHI. They are operating EPCI contracts, so turnkey contracts for their part. But there will be, of course, for substation foundations or for cables and so on. And the majority of the companies we represent are, let's say, second tier or further down the supply chain. So that is something we also would like to work with our members, how this market design change to this auctioning system, and which will result into change of the contracting of the construction companies. How will this impact on our supply chain? Because I deem that the majority of our members will not know of course they will maybe know the name of the wind farm where they're supplying in, but they will not see anything of the final customer of the construction company. They will maximum see the OEM manufacturer, and that's it. So this is, yeah, please.
Thank you. We have time for a last question or comment.
Yeah, Mark, for European Commission, I have a question regarding the disruption in components you mentioned. Is it something which is because what I understand in current ongoing operations, the renewable energy is produced. Maybe there are some issues with maintenance, but the main disruption is actually in what I understand in development new projects and setting up new offshore renewable energy. So is there any issue in components because of the lack within Europe of stocks, or it is because actually we have all over Europe the disruptions in working by SMEs? Thank you.
The one hand is of course lack of orders, and then if you, let's say, I was for some years I was in the meantime I was working not for offshore wind but in shipbuilding industry. So of course you have a certain, if you get an order you have a certain lead time although if you have no orders, yeah, it's a wrong perception to say, of course, if you get an order, then you can supply in 6 weeks, for example. That's not correct. Then you have an engineering phase. Then you have to buy components as supplier or manufacturer, and then you have to manufacture components. You have to testing and so on. So for I would say minimum, you have from when you receive the order or the contract, then you have a minimum 6 months or so to provide the components to the next step in the supply chain, and that's the minimum. And that would, let's say, without any disruption of any supply chains. At the moment, we can see that, for example, if you just consider provision of parts from Asia, for example, we can see in Bremerhaven in the harbor, which has one of the bigger container terminals in Europe, that receive of containers has significantly shrinked in the last weeks, and so they are also in the complete harbor. They are going on short work time, and they don't know when this transport chains will pick up again. So no idea at the moment. And at least if the vessel has not been loaded and started, let's say today in let's say in Shanghai, for example, then it will take, let's say, including incoming customs and so on, at least 5 to 6 weeks until it will arrive in Bremerhaven. And then customs, and then you can ship it to the manufacturer, for example, for switch cabinets or for certain drives or so on, or if, for the next assembly stage. So that means that is something, and that would mean the ship must have been already loaded in Shanghai. If it's not loaded and they don't have components, there's no container on the vessel, then we are talking totally different story. Yeah, and then even if you receive an order today, and then you have an engineering and you know what you have to purchase in, for example, in China or Korea or wherever in this area, then I would say for the first components, at least half a year. Switch cabinets or electric motors, or if they are not manufactured in Europe. Oh.
Okay. Thank you very much, Helmut. Thank you, everyone. It's time to close. It has been a very, very interesting session, Helmut. Very clear your explanation. And we continue in touch. Please send me the presentation if you don't mind, and we will share it in the ACCP website. Okay. Tomorrow we will speak about creative industries. You are invited to join us if you want. Thank you. See you soon, I hope.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.